And if we zoom in and take a closer look, you can see the very first flower buds starting to form. The only saving grace is the lettuce, and it's the only reason I haven't set this bed on fire yet. The French breakfast radishes have been doing amazing, and they're almost ready for harvest. This bed should produce about 47 pounds towards my 650-pound goal. I want to show that you can grow lots of beautiful flowering things along with your produce, and that front yards can be a hell lot more than just grass. Hi, I'm Amy, the Nourishing Gardener, and welcome to my garden, where I have a goal of growing 650 pounds of food. I'm growing in Ontario, Canada, Zone 6A. We're about 2 weeks past our last spring frost, and let's check out how the garden's growing. Starting with my large in-ground bed, I have it planted out mostly with broccoli. These plants have only been in the ground about 3 weeks, and I would say that they've easily doubled in size, and they'll probably double in size again a few times before harvest. They're doing well overall, but we've had a couple of very strong wind and rainstorms over the last week, which has pushed a few of the plants over. My broccoli has suffered some pressure from some ants nibbling on their stems. That's why you'll see cinnamon around some of the base of the plants. I find these are the plants that got blown around the most during the windstorms as well. I think to help support these broccoli's recovery, I'm gonna come in and use some compost and mound the compost around the stems of the broccoli just to give them a little bit more stability and to give them a little bit of a protective layer from the nibbling insects. If we zoom out and look at the garden as a whole, you'll notice that even though I've done some interplanting, I haven't planted any flowers. Right now, I just have vegetables, and that's not a good way to build a garden ecosystem. Outside of the handful of perennials I have on the front of my in-ground bed, there is nothing to attract beneficial insects to the garden. In order to fix this, a couple weeks ago, I started some marigold seeds, and then yesterday, I stress sowed some dill seed. Dill is apparently incredibly beneficial to grow with brassicas. It helps cover their scent, and when the dill flowers, it attracts lots of great beneficial insects to the garden. In the four corners of my in-ground bed, I have planted cherry tomatoes. I think this will add nice structure to this bed that otherwise kind of looks like it's just floating in my lawn. I find cherry tomatoes grow great up these spirals. They're neat, they're tidy, and if we zoom in and take a closer look, you can see the very first flower buds starting to form, a sure sign that fruit isn't too far away. Over to the raised bed garden, this bed is planted out mostly with potatoes. As an experiment, earlier this spring, I sowed a bunch of different crops between my rows of potatoes to see if any of them would intercrop well with potatoes. Potatoes take a long time to grow, so if I could get a quick crop while the potatoes were up and sprouting, it would be a bonus. But so far, I would say the interplanting isn't really working out. Now that the heat is here, the potatoes are growing so much faster than the toy choy that I have planted in here. The salad turnips are also not quite bulbing quick enough to outcompete the potatoes' growth. I had really hoped these peas would have grown tall enough that they wouldn't be blocked by the potato leaves, but they just aren't putting on any rapid growth. The potatoes are far outpacing them. This spinach is the only intercropping in this bed that I think has the potential of working if I was to start the plants in a cell tray before transplanting instead of starting from seed in the bed when I planted the potatoes. While the intercropping isn't working as I imagined, the potatoes, the main crop I'm trying to get out of this bed, is growing quite well. This bed has been the bane of my existence this season. The only saving grace is the lettuce, and it's the only reason I haven't set this bed on fire yet. Out of the 10 broccoli plants I have planted in this garden, 4 are completely done for. Ants have been attacking the base of the plants and just chewing them apart. From my understanding, ants are the pest I see, not the pest causing the initial damage to the plants. However, they are still the ones causing the final straw for these plants. What I'm sure is not helping the growth of anything in this bed is the soil. This bed has the worst soil out of all my raised beds. It is so clay heavy that when the top layer of the soil dries out, it starts to crack and it acts like a rock. Nothing wants to grow in that. What needs to happen is a really good layer of mulch across this bed and most of my beds, but especially this one. If we look over into my large in-ground bed where I have some mulch already, the soil is very similar, but I'm not having the same cracking issue. I had planted some green onions in between the broccoli to act as a pest deterrent. Clearly not effective with ants. Look how sad this broccoli is. Even the peas I have on the back end of the bed are not growing nearly as well as the rest of the peas in the garden. And I think that comes down to just roots being able to access consistent moisture. So the lettuce, however, have been doing wonderfully. They are enjoying the cool weather of the spring. And they're giving me confidence that the whole bed isn't a write-off. I think why they're doing better than the rest of the crops in the bed is because the leaves are covering the soil and I'm not having the drying out cracking issue. I'm really hoping by the end of June that we can look back in this chapter and just laugh. Now this bed might look empty, but it actually has a very important crop in it. It is just very small. Along my trellis, I have tomatoes growing and they are doing so well now that they are transplanted into the ground. They were looking a little rough as seedlings because they had to wait a little bit longer than normal to get into the ground with this cool weather, but the new growth is looking so strong and healthy, I don't think it'll stunt them at all. Between the tomatoes, I seeded some beets, which are tiny, but they're up and they're growing. Some mulch here would definitely help everything's growth as well. Now in this empty space is actually multiple rows of carrots. They are freshly germinated and still very, very tiny. Carrots are an incredibly important crop in my garden because they kind of just go into everything. While the seeds are up, the germination has been spotty. So I think I'm going to go back into this bed and reseed. On the end of the bed, I have a dwarf cabbage called Tiara growing, and it is doing fantastic. It won't be long before we'll be able to make some coleslaw and some cabbage salads. They have suffered some of the ant damage, especially this one plant, but it doesn't seem to be stopping the growth. I think I'll go along and cover the stems and add a good layer of mulch here too, and they should be fine. Surprisingly, I'm not getting lots of slug damage this season. I'm seeing evidence of slugs, but they're not really doing much in the way of damage, so they must just be tiny little things. Once the carrots really get their legs underneath them, this is going to be a beautiful planting that I cannot wait to see. This bed is supposed to be a heavy hitter when it comes down to harvest weights. I have both potatoes and onions planted in this bed. The onions are doing fantastic. I've interplanted them with some radishes, which are all up and doing well. So far, I'm really liking this interplanting. Everything is playing nicely together. I will have to come through and thin out some of the radishes down to one plant. I am seeing evidence of the allium leaf miner, their traditional little dots that they leave on the top of the plants. So I'm hoping that the BT I have been spraying will stop the larvae from damaging the plants. I have another patch of potatoes with more interplanting, and most of the interplantings aren't working here either. I'm having the same problem with the bok choy that I was having with the toy choy. They're just not keeping up to the potatoes' growth. The French breakfast radishes have been doing amazing and they're almost ready for harvest. So this is an interplanting I will absolutely do again. The baby kale is also doing well. I think I'll get maybe one cut of it. And the weeds. It is true what they say. If you disturb soil, you will get weeds. Because these beds are new this year, I moved a bunch of soil around and I have never seen so many weeds. This bed should produce about 47 pounds towards my 650 pound goal, so be sure to subscribe to see if it does. This bed may be narrow, but man, will it be productive. On the corner, I have some baby cucumbers. I like to trap the heat in with the dome. Between all the plants growing along the trellis, I've interplanted some beets. This sowing a beet is doing much better than the beets in my other bed, and that's because the soil is much better in this bed. And more weeds. I have a lot of weeding ahead of me. These tomato plants have outgrown the weirdness they were dealing with as seedlings, and I'm seeing flowers, which means we'll be in tomato season before we know it. With some good heat, the trellis will be covered in no time. Along the front of this bed, I have more onions, and these ones are interplanted with arugula. I'll also come through and thin the arugulas down to one plant. The thinning just makes sure that the plants can get the nutrients they need and aren't competing. This is important for both the arugula and the onions, the main crop I'm trying to grow. I'm so happy with how much the onions have put on for growth and how deep green they are. I am seeing some evidence of the allium leaf miner on these ones as well. So fingers crossed that they can just outgrow it and that it doesn't take out the whole onion crop. On the arch trellises, I have peas planted for my spring crop, and then I have an arch planted out with watermelon, the center one planted out with cantaloupe, and that last one planted out with an acorn squash. The shade experiment is also going well so far. Everything is growing, but just more slowly. I have moved my peppers outside. They are hardening off. I have also potted them up into larger soil balls because they were starting to yellow and look really sad and fighting for light down in the basement. But I expect them to green up here quickly. I expect them to recover and be big, lush plants. Over by my small collection of pots here, my eldest son put together this little pot of flowers. He picked out the whole mix. I think he did a wonderful job. The youngest and I planted out this pot of beans. The first sowing rotted out because it just wouldn't get hot enough for them to germinate. But the second sowing is up and doing well. I cannot wait to have green beans in the kitchen again. A huge area I'm trying to improve in my garden this year is my berry production. I've had berries, but I haven't taken care of them. So I spent a lot of this spring sprucing up their living conditions. And so far, things are responding fairly well. This red raspberry has put on tons of growth and is loaded up with buds. Over on the other side, I have my fall gold raspberry that is doing equally, if not better. Some of the buds have already opened up with flowers. In the center here, I have 2 blackberry plants, and I'm about ready to pull them out. Every year, they flush out from the bottom and put on lots of growth, but the vines never really break dormancy. I've checked them, they're alive, they just never seem to leaf out and flower. So I'm thinking after the first crop of raspberries has come off, the fall golds, I'm going to divide the plant up and spread it across. So it'll just be a solid row of raspberries. The strawberry cages so far are working exactly the way I designed them to. I'm seeing lots of flowers on the strawberry plants, which is amazing given the current circumstance with strawberries. It is so easy to lift the top up and weed. I'm even able to do it with a camera in my hand. I'm so looking forward to this June and seeing all these strawberries ripen. It's been a good minute since I've been able to harvest a bowl full of strawberries. The blueberries moved out of these spots and into their own pots are doing amazing. Look, this one even has flowers. And the blueberry that had a very sad root system and I thought was dead is leafing out and pushing new growth along the stems. I cannot wait to see this become a little bush by the end of the season. And we're 3 for 3. All 3 plants are doing super well. With the backyard fully covered, let's move over to the front yard where I have more produce growing. A moment to fully enjoy this beautiful creeping phlox that is fully in bloom. My front yard garden is shaped in a half moon and it is filled with flowering perennials, fruit trees, and annual vegetables. My goal here is to show that growing vegetables doesn't have to happen in a dedicated vegetable garden. It can be done in any landscape that has some sunlight. And for a lot of homes, one of the sunniest places is the front yard. However, most people just grow grass. I want to show that you can grow lots of beautiful flowering things along with your produce and that front yards can be a hell lot more than just grass. My path into the garden is stepping stones and beautiful creeping thyme. In a few weeks here, it'll be blooming with beautiful pink blossoms. Along the side of my path, I have planted out 5 cabbages. These are my larger cabbages compared to the tiara I have growing in the backyard. The variety of cabbage is called Golden Acre, and it should produce heads that are between 3 and 5 pounds each. My eldest and I are working at getting the garden certified as a wildlife habitat, and one area we were missing is a clean water source. So we've added this little pond on the other side of the walkway that's already being enjoyed by a little roly-poly. In my upper annual veg growing area, I've planted more broccoli. The cages around them are to protect them from bunnies because I do suffer from bunny damage on my vegetables if I don't protect them while they're young. I've tried interplanting marigolds and different bunny protecting flowers, but none of them has worked as well as a physical barrier. Along the front of this garden bed, it is planted out with flowering shrubs and perennials. The main height in the front part of this garden is 2 apple trees that unfortunately this year did not flower, so I won't be getting any apples. But that's all right. I think they need to focus on putting on more growth. They're about 4 years old, and I think they're a little small for 4-year-old trees, so I'm really hoping the fertilizing I'm doing in this front bed will help their growth as well. In order to lock in some moisture at the roots of the apple trees, I also planted rhubarb. My hope is that its big leaves will help shade the soil and help the apple trees explode in growth because they have even moisture. In this lower annual vegetable patch, I have, surprise, surprise, more broccoli. This is a different variety called Green Magic, and I'm finding these plants are staying on the smaller side compared to my other variety called Gypsy. And to cap off the bed, I have a peach tree, which bloomed its beautiful bright pink blooms. I may let it produce 1 peach this year, if any form. But this tree needs to put on some sizable growth before I can expect any real crop of peaches. So far, these broccoli are keeping up with the ones in the backyard, which is a problem I've had in previous seasons, where everything in the front yard stays a little bit smaller, I think due to lack of nutrients.